What you're about to watch contains explicit language, adult themes, violence, and may not be suitable for viewers under 18. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Hello, people of the internet. My name is JD Shadow. I've been wrestling about doing this for quite some time. Not necessarily about doing this at all, but about how to approach this. Because, yes, I know that Cinematic Venom did actually respond to my video, and I have seen the end result of that. Now, before I go any further, I do understand that these are going to be very sensitive topics to people, and this is a very polarizing issue. So, for those people who are automatically going to type up their comments and to spout their anger, their frustration at some of the stuff that I'm saying, do me a favor, take a step back, relax, and breathe. Just for a moment. Breathe in and breathe out. Put your arms to their side and just sit back and listen. It is going to be okay if someone else has maybe a different opinion about what happened, maybe a different look as to what they read. It is going to be okay. It doesn't necessarily mean that they discount every single thing that was ever said. It just means maybe they have a reason to suspect that not everybody is on the up and up. It is going to be okay if you hear a different opinion. It doesn't mean anything bad, and I do believe that we need to get past that. There's a crossroads we have to get past, and unfortunately that's where we're having the all-out bloodbath war. So yes, just take a step back and breathe for a moment. Let me have a chance to explain things before we get uptight. So I want to break this down into two parts. First, about what I believe about his response directly, and about some of the questions that have been raised because of that. Now, keep in mind that I have made a few mistakes in that initial video, and I wanted to address them as I addressed the Cinematic Venom part of this whole response. And keep in mind that, yes, I do realize that this is a very polarizing issue. The whole thing with Change the Channel has become very polarizing, and no matter how flat a pancake is, it still has two sides. There is the side that many people took, at least initially, and then later on, as more and more people started to talk about it, I saw a different take begin to take fold. And because of that, I began to think, okay, maybe we need to look at things a little bit more objectively. When I saw the TLDR version of the document, I was more or less on the side of producers. Because, yes, Channel Awesome was a place in which I knew there was some toxicity. I already knew that there were some problems going on there, more or less because they had some producers in which had a lot of questionable antics brought upon them. And I had listed those being Dan Olson and Lindsay Ellis because, yes, the things that they were against, don't think for a second that the people who they were against didn't like them either. The feeling was mutual there. And because they had a jaded viewpoint about them already, they may have had a less than favorable view about Lindsay Ellis's words, and they may have taken them with a grain of salt and may have not taken them very seriously. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Let's get to what Cinematic Venom actually said. And keep in mind that this is very polarizing, and some of the stuff I say you may not like. However, it is the things that I believe. It is the things that, because it is my video, this is my channel, I feel like I have the right to tell people what I believe. Now, to be quite honest, however, I can do that a lot better than I have been. I got flipped out on Twitter and in the comment section, partially because I felt as though I was being attacked. I was being attacked unfairly, or at least I felt that way. Now, people have a lot of deeply rooted opinions about this, and it's a very sensitive topic because it goes into some very sensitive material. I understand that, I get that, and don't think for a second I have never been harassed or bullied before. I've gone through that before. I've gone through that when I was younger. I've been through that my whole life. I've heard it all before. The sound of my voice, the weight, the way that I look. I've gone through that before. It's something that I still go through regularly. It is nothing new to me, and I understand that. I can't say that I went through sexual assault before, but I can safely say that I have gone through harassment before. It is something that I wouldn't wish on anybody, so I understand that. At the same time, however, it's the vitriolic comments. It's those types of comments that I took away, that I got rid of, because we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be lowering ourselves to that level. And And yes, I did get a little bit uptight about that. I did get a little uptight because of that. And also because I was going through a tough time in real life at that point in time. You can no doubt see what I was going through and how I was reacting to it at that point in time. It was something that at the end of the day, perhaps I should have waited a little bit in order to address these concerns, and I've been wrestling with myself in order to figure out how to properly address them. So to those people who saw me at my worst, I do apologize for that. I do think that everybody does make mistakes. CV obviously has in his life and throughout the course of this, and we've all have. I can no doubt assume that maybe Channel Awesome also thinks that, hey, we made mistakes, we were trying to get better. And we've all made mistakes at one point in time. The important thing is that we learn from the mistakes, though, that we learn to become better. And have we become better? So in the way of cinematic Venom, the one thing that I did not do that I'm going to talk about here that I believe that he didn't go into is that I didn't press hard enough the existence of my 5 other videos talking about the Change the Channel controversy. Now, in those videos, I go into greater detail than I probably did in the response to Cinematic Venom's documentary about what my thoughts were. Now, maybe I didn't go into too much thoughts about the pop quiz hot shot controversy, and maybe my viewpoints have changed just a little slightly since the last time I made those, since I made something like that. However, at the same time, my opinions I do stand by. The issue regarding Allison, I do still believe that she needs to find her way to reconcile already. It does seem as though she's trying to twist the knife in the way. And again, this is not just me saying it, it is the majority of the Channel Awesome Reddit that is saying that. I'm pretty sure Cinematic Venom has read those Reddit posts and he knows what exactly I'm talking about there. There's a good majority of them that are saying the same things I'm saying. But I didn't press enough the existence of them and that I could defer to them for people to get my reactions and opinions about these issues. Remember in the very first special report I made about that subject, I actually sided with the producers in a little way because I read the TLDR of it, and that didn't go into greater detail about the actual words that these people were saying. I never did look at first at Lindsay Ellis's testimony because that was the one that made me recoil, to be taken aback, to think, wait a minute, I know about this story. First of all, she's not going into what that was all about, and second of all, there was a lot more than just a conspiracy theory. There were some actual things that transpired to make it seem like there was something to it. The police stain that was on Dan Olsen's house, for instance, there was a lot that went into that. So I think it was important that people know about what was going on there, and I went into great detail in one of the videos about what exactly was going on. Why exactly did she mention this? What was the conspiracy theory? And why I did not think she was being truthful. Remember the Skype chat logs that were leaked in 2016, in which Dan Olsen was a part of the Crash Override Network, were confirmed to be accurate, were confirmed to be authentic by Ian Miles Chong, somebody who was a member of the Crash Override Network at that point in time. And yes, he is featured in a lot of the Skype chat logs that were leaked. And yes, I do think in a way that does put into question the sequence of events of what Lindsay is saying, in which Mike McChaud called her and instigated something when in reality maybe Dan Olsen was the first person to contact Mike and say something about them and saying, hey, do this and that with the story or whatever. And that was a very polarizing article. That was a very controversial article that he made about 8chan. And I go into greater detail in those other videos. Again, I can defer to those other videos because I have made them before. Now, my main flaw is that I had assumed that the majority of people that were going to watch that video were going to know, or to know that I am deferring to those other videos in order to say, hey, because I've said my piece before, I don't really have to here. I can go right to what CV has said and what my opinions of that were. In a way, I was talking to the audience that had already viewed that had already seen that, and then after they've seen all of those ones, had watched Venom's documentary of that controversy. I shouldn't have assumed that, because the people that were coming and watching the video because he had responded to it were those people who had not watched those and may have not cared to watch those because they had seen that I was just being vague about things and I was not being concrete. Now, there are some people who watched that was never going to be convinced. They were going to say, hey, I side with some of the stuff that General Awesome said. Oh, I'm a horrible person for doing that. And that's really not fair to those people who might have a different perspective of the controversy, who might have a different take on a certain person or a group of individuals included within that document. They might have a different story to tell than some of the other people. I think Count Dracula, somebody who I was accused of taking out of context, which I don't think I ever did. I never did say that he didn't support Change the Channel. I just don't think he was one of the more vitriolic members of Change the Channel. He had said what I believed and what Dr. Gonzo, somebody else who kind of gets ignored in this whole thing. For some weird reason, his words get ignored. And I think I know the reason why is because while Dr. Gonzo had no nice things to say about Mike Michaud, he also says that he doesn't know whether or not he was blackballed or not because the other contributors ignored him when he was going through his difficulties. That tells me and confirms to me that there were some big problems all around. There was a general toxicity going on within the confines of that website. There was a lot of problems there. It was not just confined to the highest ups. It was not confined to the CEO or Doug or Rob, if you want to include them in this. So I don't think I had done that. I don't think that he was taken out of context. I just believe more what he says because what he has said confirms what I had already believed. That at least some of the producers were being toxic themselves. They were not saints. They were not that innocent. They were being very difficult to deal with, very difficult to work with. Now, one of the main criticisms I kept getting is that I didn't watch the documentary at all. And that is untrue. I had watched a documentary, but the problem was that I skimmed through it. I didn't watch the entire thing. I didn't watch all of it. And the reason for that is because, as he had said in his response, there was just so much time that we have allotted to us in order to watch something and get our thoughts in place before we're able to make a video, before we're having to make a video because of the relevance of things. We had to go through things while they're still relevant, and we had to get the video out quickly. In that sense, sometimes we do miss some things. Sometimes we don't get to everything. Sometimes we have to skim through stuff. And maybe in the process of that, I might have missed him actually being objective. I might have actually missed him saying that sort of stuff. And I don't doubt he has. I don't doubt that for a second. He showed it, so I don't doubt that he said it in the documentary. So yeah, very much a fault on my behalf. However, I want you guys to understand why that happened. I want you guys to understand, not as an excuse, but rather a reason as to why that occurred. Some other smaller things that occurred, of course, I mispronounced Mike Michaud's name. I always thought it was Mike Michaud. I always thought there was a K sound there somewhere, and I never really did watch anything in which he pronounced his name or that he talked about how to pronounce his name, and you just have to excuse me for that. I at first mispronounced names a lot when I first read them, so you might just have to forgive me for that. I am criticized for that all the time. So it's not just here, it's a lot of places. I always end up mispronouncing names when I first read them. And also one of the more severe things is that I misspoke of the date in which Justin Carmichael committed suicide. I said 2015 because I read a tweet that Todd and Shadows posted, and that was an important tweet because of what he said there, and that sticks out in my mind, and because of the events that Todd and Shadows was alluding to, and the dates that I know that had occurred in, I thought 2015. And my mind just went to that date. My mind just went to that year. So yeah, it is 2014, not 2015. I had missed that by a country mile. So yes, those are the things that he criticized me for. Also, there are some things that perhaps I went hard on that, and again, I didn't defer enough to my other videos because again, I didn't want to go into full detail about what I had said before because I had assumed that the audience that was coming in had already watched those things going into this one. So I do defer to those videos. I want to make sure they are not ignored, that no one can ignore that I had made those videos when they respond to them. That might have been the reason why that got completely ignored, that I had made all those other videos. And plus, yes, I have read the tweets from Cinematic Venom saying that he has to go off of social media for some time because he is in a dark place. I don't wish that on him. I do not. Let's so hope that he gets into a better place, because as much as I may not see eye to eye on him about this particular topic, and I may not see eye to eye with his audience about this certain topic, I don't want to wish bad things on him. I don't want to do that, and I don't do that. He's reached out to me when I was in a dark place some time ago, a few days ago, so it is also only fitting that I would do the same for him. We may not agree about this topic, however, at the same time, I do think that he can be a good person. He can have the capacity to be more positive about things and to hope that people get better and to be able to wish that journalism is better and is a better place to work than it was at that point in time. It was a toxic place, but at the same time, I do believe that they can get better, and we should look to build people up instead of tear people down. So yes, I do believe that Cinematic Venom can get back to a more positive place, and maybe he can make a more positive thing on the back of this, because he's got the fan base now, he's got the people paying attention to him now. Maybe push some of his other content, maybe show what he can do, or maybe start his own company that may be pro-consumer on the back of this. Maybe that would create competition for Channel Awesome, and maybe that would make everybody a little bit better. It may provide a choice for consumers, and yes, that is pro-consumer. So yeah, I do think he can do something with this that doesn't include trying to tear people down. And I think that's a problem a lot of us have, is that we are more interested in tearing people down than to try to build people up. And yes, I am guilty of that as well, so don't think that I'm blaming him for that when I'm not blaming myself for that as well. We all have done that from time to time, and maybe that's something that this day and age is more popular to do, and unfortunately that's something that we have to change at some point in time. So let's hope that it ends up happening. There are some things, however, he gets wrong, and I believe the one thing that he does, and this is not just him, this is about the majority of the people who are the more extreme members of Change the Channel, is that they produce blanket statements. Any kind of defense goes into they defend rapists or they defend abusers. I don't think it's as cut as dry as that. One thing that I got criticized for was to calling myself a critical thinker. Now, let me go into a little detail about why I thought that, or what I said that. Now, first things first, I probably should have said that about myself. That sounds narcissistic, but I do believe a more careful examination is needed when you're talking about these types of issues, when we talk about things like abuse and neglect and harassment, because everybody right in the moment has a different take on what constitutes to abuse and harassment. And that is that crossroads that I'm talking about. That is the entirety of the crossroads, is that we're at that impasse, that we just can't get around that. We gotta be talking about that, about how we perceive the definitions, how we consider abuse and harassment. What do we consider that? And I think that is a discussion that none of us are having right now that we should have. Unfortunately, I can only speak for myself of what I consider abuse and harassment. And unfortunately, to other people, they can only speak for themselves, and unfortunately that's going to create a situation in which you will question another person's definition, because to one person they might think of something as a form of harassment, where I might look at this exact same thing and think, wow, you're overreacting to that sort of thing. And we've seen people weaponize those words in order to silence other people. That little chilling effect, the labeling, but that goes into another completely different topic. But I want you to to understand about why people have questioned some of the people in the document. It's because they've heard things before. They've seen things from these people before, and it's because of that they don't really take them at their word. That doesn't mean every single person who is in the document was lying. Of course, I am saying that again, but at the same time, if you question enough people, then what's going to happen is that you're going to think that, okay, most of the stuff is either debated or it's something that we don't understand what anybody could have done about it or should have done about it, and things in between. And some feel as though what happened was a case of mismanagement and people not understanding what they were doing as opposed to malicious intent. Now, again, I'm going to defer to my other videos because I go into greater detail about particular cases like the pop quiz hotshot. That is something that we can say is something that raises discussion about crowdfunding in general. Some of the controversies that go into crowdfunding in general. Stuff like the Mighty Number 9 debacle. Stuff like what happened with Trust versus Women in video games and how that Kickstarter went down. All of those different things. All of the stuff that goes into how it's stressful for both the donor and the creator. A lot of stuff is not talked about. And it is, again, something that deserves a lot of discussion there. So I don't think it's something that is exclusive to Channel Awesome, and Channel Awesome might have been in between a rock and a hard place there too. It is just something that we have to discuss more thoroughly, and we don't have that kind of discussion, at least not yet. And I don't know the basis of how to start that debate. Maybe someone who knows more about crowdfunding than I do, because I haven't really crowdfunded many things. The only thing I think I've crowdfunded is Jenny Barage's Base Gamer. That's about the only thing I've ever crowdfunded before, and that is because I believed in what she was selling and because she is a good person. She and I talked a lot when she was big in social media, and since she got married, I don't think she talks that much on Twitter anymore, but I wish that I had the opportunity to speak with her again, because I do believe me and her are still on good terms, and she's a very sweet person to be around. I can vouch for her. She's a very nice person, but I don't think that I have the capacity to really go into great detail about crowdfunding, because I've only done crowdfunding once and I only donated once. Maybe somebody who has donated to Kickstarters or Indiegogo campaigns or maybe GoFundMe's more than I have can speak a little bit more about that and how the issues are between the creator having to deliver on their promise and the donor worried about their money. That is something that deserves a bigger debate than just what Channel Awesome was accused of doing. And the quality debate is all subjective as well. I don't want to get much into that, but that is something that I do believe deserves its own debate, and we don't get that, and it's because of that I don't really want to judge one way or the other on that, because if I'm going to judge Channel Awesome on that, then I have to judge a whole lot of other Kickstarters and Indiegogos based upon what I've said, and that is something that I'm not ready to do because I'm not seeing that discussion as a whole. We've seen good crowdfunding projects, we've seen bad projects, we've seen projects not come to fruition, we've seen crowdfunding projects that were very good on paper then fell flat. We've seen a lot of stuff, man, and people also wanted to get into the scene that Lindsay Ellis talks about into Boldly Free. Again, I talked about that in another video. I'm not going to go into detail about that there. You can go watch my previous videos about Change the Channel in order to get that opinion. Now, I will try to, in the future, get the Change the Channel videos into their own playlist, because I did hear that perhaps because they were so buried, no one could find them. I will try to do that. I will try to make sure people see that. And when I get that up running, I will post it on the end screen for you, because I want you guys to have an open mind about this. I want to make sure that people have open minds, because not all of us saw the exact same things the exact same way as other people. To some people, those chat logs that Channel Awesome posted in their response were taken completely out of context, but to other people, they really nailed it. They really put the benefit of the doubt into their court. Was the chat logs about Wario shoddily edited to the point where someone could have guessed who it was? Maybe, but at the same time, I do believe that it proved that they at the very least did what they had to do when they knew about the second victim. I think it's a general consensus by this point that they were talking about a second victim and they weren't going to go into the first victim. Now, the reason why I believe that is because, and I don't know if I talked about this in any of the previous videos, so I'll just go brief into detail here. And if someone wants me to elaborate a little bit more on this, they're free to ask me about it. But I do believe in that perhaps the first victim was also a very unique case. It delved into legal age versus mental age, and it delved into mental illness, and we don't have enough research into mental illness. Cinematic Venom went into his battles with maniac depression, and I don't know about that particular depression, but I do know about PTSD. I do know about introversion. I know all about anxiety. I go through it as well. I'm anxious as of the recording of this video. I'm very scared about how this is going to turn out. I'm trying to do it in such a way that people are not going to be completely mad at me. That's why I'm saying to relax, take a breath for a second, and just hear me out. And don't get too angry at some of the things I'm saying, because I'm trying to be as open-minded as possible and trying to be as cordial as possible while still trying to say where I'm coming from and why I'm saying what I'm saying and why I am believing the things that I'm believing. It's not just because, oh, I'm a conspiracy theorist and something like that. It's because everybody has the right to a defense, and because there's always two different sides. And in this case, I don't know if Channel Awesome could have done anything there. I think perhaps there was too many questions surrounding that. I'm not trying to doubt the victim and their testimony about the actual occurrence, but what I'm saying is that I don't know what Channel Awesome could have done there, and there's a lot of debate of whether or not he was employed at Channel Awesome at that point in time, or just a contributor to the site, or was he contracted one way or the other. There's a lot of questions surrounding that first case, so I'm not completely sure if they could have done anything. Now, maybe they could have acted at that point in time. Personally, I don't know how you even try a case like that. I don't know how you even judge a case like that. I don't want to be a judge or a jury if he were arrested upon that. And I do reserve my feelings about that, in that maybe if he had been arrested sooner, maybe if the victims pressed charges, then perhaps there could have been a chance that he would have been alive today. And because of that, he could have been examined, he could have had his mind looked at, and we could have gotten a lot better details about what had occurred at that point in time. And he would have been around to defend himself one way or the other, because I do believe in innocence until proven guilty in the court of law. Court of public opinion is always a lot harsher than the court of law. He was never tried, he was never convicted. So if the victim does that, if the victim decides not to press charges, and in this case chose to not have his name revealed, and I do believe that even if Channel Awesome completely whited out his name, someone was going to find out sooner or later. I don't think it was going to be kept a secret for that long. It wasn't going to be kept a secret forever. Someone was going to find out. But if the victim chooses to do that, maybe they felt their hands were tied in that situation, and because of the weird and awkward nature of the case, maybe they didn't feel as though they felt comfortable addressing that, at least in that response. Now, you might disagree with me there, and you're free to do that, but that sort of thing where you might disagree with me and I myself am not completely sure about that, and I'm not going to go into the suspicion of a third victim. I'm only saying suspicion because I personally have not seen anything beyond what Iron Liz has said to the indication of a third victim in that whole story. So I don't feel comfortable in saying that is an absolute fact that it happened, just because I honestly have not seen that. I'm going to say at least two victims. I'm going to go there. But at the same time, beyond firing him, beyond taking a look at it, and if I was somebody who was accused of that sort of thing, then yes, I would want them to do a thorough investigation. I don't care how many weeks it takes, get to the truth. I don't care if it takes longer than maybe someone might want it to, get to the truth. But beyond what they did, I don't see them being able to do much of anything else. And keep in mind that the second victim, that was more of a clearer cut case. You can't really get around the notion that he was allegedly assaulting a person while they were sleeping, while they were comatose. There's really nothing you can say to parse that. So I do believe they acted on the more clear-cut case there. And the first case was so awkward and just so unusual. And I'm not trying to discount the victim in any way, but at the same time, the first story we heard was really unusual, for lack of a better term, or lack of better terms there. It was something that, at the end of the day, I don't think they could have done anything, and at the very least not in the legal sense. At the very least not in a sort of way where they wouldn't get into trouble down the line. There was a whole thing about the age of consent, as I said, and that is much different in other parts of the world and maybe even other parts of the country. If you take a look at the Sony censorship thing, you'll know exactly why there is that whole debate, and that debate has gone on for a long time now. Plus, she had said that she didn't realize that was what it was until she took a look at the pamphlet and said, oh my god, that was me. That seems to be rather peculiar, rather unusual. Not saying it could have happened that way, but it was rather unusual to have that happen. Plus, there was a lot of ellipses in that particular passage. I'm not quite sure why there was, but there really was. Maybe it was a chat room that there was being revealed through, but that to me sounds kind of weird and just adds to the amount of questions that one may have about that particular incident. Not saying that it didn't happen or it couldn't have happened that way, but it does raise too many questions. And those are the type of questions that someone might ask if it was put to trial in a court of law. And you might disagree with me and you might hate me for doing that, for saying that. However, that's what a judge is going to look at. That's what somebody is going to ask about, whether or not she felt as though it was consensual at the time that it happened, and of course the legal age versus the mental age. There's too many questions, and because of that, maybe they didn't feel comfortable in addressing that at all. Again, if they did nothing after the second case, then of course they're going to be fools for not acting upon that, because that is so clear cut and clear as day that there's no getting around it. The first case, however, it's much murkier, and if I need to go into greater detail about why I think that is, I will no doubt do that. I will do that for you, because that is a very big discussion that perhaps we need to have as well. You may not think that we need to have it, but us asking all of these questions, and I'm not the only person who's asking them, I'm just telling you what I've been hearing other people ask, and maybe we all have those kind of questions in the back of our head. Perhaps that shows that maybe we do need to have that discussion, or maybe we need to have an additional discussion. And the reason why we examine these cases and we ask these questions is because we also have been seeing that these types of allegations can really damage a person's reputation, regardless of whether or not they are found guilty in the court of law, or they are even charged with anything. If you take a look at what Aziz Ansari and DeGrasse Tyson has been going through. And plus, let's not forget that there was a big case in 2002 in which a person by the name of Brian Banks was accused of raping a classmate, and the sentence was 5 years of prison, 5 years of probation, and he also had to register as a sex offender. She admitted that she had made the entire thing up, none of it was true, and he was let out of all charges dropped. She eventually got sued for that for a huge sum. So yeah, this is something that we need to listen to the victim in the case of the people who had to deal with Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and all those other people who obviously are monsters. We also have to make sure that we are aware that a false accusation can really damage a person's reputation to the point where their careers and lives are ruined. We cannot just throw those accusations around. We have to take them extremely seriously. We also have to examine them really seriously to the point where somebody who is accused gets a fair trial. Now, you may agree with me or disagree with me on that point, but it is the notion that we have these questions. It is the notion that we ask these questions that makes me think that we did not do due process into looking into these claims. We saw the document, albeit it was a very long document. There were some receipts put in there as well, but we looked into it and then we never gave the other side a fair chance. Now, did they explain everything away? Of course they did not. I go into great detail in the other videos, and I defer to those again as to where they could have explained a little further, or where something was completely backwards. But at the same time, on some of the larger, more damning cases, I do believe that they were trying to tell their side of the story. And I don't think it's fair that we completely shove off those particular accounts or their side of the story. I don't think think we were looking at that through an objective lens. I do believe we had a bias there of, okay, we believe these contributors, we believe these former producers, and nothing that anybody else says is going to change our minds. And anybody who doubts us, anybody who says anything different, we are going to find a way to discredit them. And that sets a double standard. That sets a complete double standard. If Brad is getting victimized by the people who believe the producers and are believing in Change the Channel, and then he gets doubted immediately that he was doxxed, then that sets a double standard. You're telling the producers that they are allowed to say every single grievance they ever had, but if somebody tells, hey, this is not how I saw it went down, or maybe the former producers were not saints, then they get thrown off to the side. Why is Malcolm somebody who, by the way, is unionized? And I'm not a complete expert, but I don't think that he would just flat out say something just to toe the company line, because he is protected. He doesn't have to toe the company line as far as I'm aware, so why would he do that? I don't think he would. And if he doesn't think that Channel Awesome is the way it was at that point in time, which I'll get into in just a second, then maybe we should also believe that. Maybe we should also, at the very least, look into whether or not they are the same company they were back at that point in time, or maybe everybody was stressed out. Remember that most of these testimonies were going to fall under the umbrella of mismanagement. That doesn't discount that they had difficulties working there or that they had troubles working there, but at the same time, most of them were of mismanagement, as I take it, and they weren't in a way of malicious intent. You can say, yeah, they abused, they neglected, they abused and harassed people, but again, outside the whole notion that we were at a crossroads of a debate of what we consider to be abuse and harassment, and we gotta get past that, and there's no easy way to get past that. Most of those cases were that of mismanagement, and some of them didn't exactly have the notion of, okay, this is extremely damning things that they were saying. Now, by that, I'm not meaning the sexual assault allegations. Whenever someone says that, some people like to throw in the sexual assault allegations right at you to say, hey, they're not all petty. I do believe that some of them were petty. I do believe that some of them weren't really worthy of getting all up in a bind about, sort of like the whole thing with the Sega Genesis. I'm not quite sure why that was such a big problem. Yes, it sucks that you were snubbed, and maybe Mike Michaud owes you a Sega Genesis at some point. Maybe they will buy you that Sega Classic that's coming out. I don't know. Maybe that might be a good truce there. But I don't think that is a very damning, a very good case to say, okay, they should be shunned for all eternity. Now, at the same time, we have to separate things we think that are petty, like that particular case, from when people were feeling abused and harassed. That part is a lot more damning, a lot more alarming. At the same time, however, I don't think it was malicious intent. I don't think that Mike Michaud intended to abuse and harass. I think he might be kind of a dick. I think he might be kind of a douchebag, but at the same time, CEOs are known to be dicks. They're known to be people who, when you quit a company or when you get fired from a company, the first person you're gonna blame is the CEO, is your boss. That just goes with the territory. And I've seen places where they have very toxic environments where no one gets along and everybody is at everybody's throat. That is never a good sign. That is never something that you want to see. And yes, this is me trying to parse him being a douchebag to some people, and maybe he shouldn't have been, from, okay, maybe he was also stressed, and just about a lot of people were being in the same way, that they were not being helpful in that regard either. It was just a bad environment all around. I do think we have to admit that it was a terrible, terrible environment to be around at that point in time, especially within those years in which they highlighted in the documentary. Hopefully things are better now. Hopefully everybody is on the same page now. It does look like they are. And that's why I do believe that, yes, we do have to give Doug the benefit of the doubt when he says, hey, things are a lot better now, because it does seem things are a lot better now. We haven't heard any recent people quitting. We haven't heard anybody going off and saying, hey, I'm mad at Channel Awesome. Yes, Rachel Tease did resign from the company, but that was on good terms. And she is starting to have her own actress career, as I remember correctly. So yeah, things might have gotten better. I don't believe it is worthy to always hold a black cloud and say, oh, people don't care about this controversy anymore. Maybe they do, but they are tired of talking about it, or maybe they had too many questions, or maybe they heard that maybe the producers weren't as friendly to other people, or maybe it was just a terrible environment to be around all around. And because of that, they don't particularly blame Channel Awesome for every single thing that ever happened. Maybe they don't completely blame them for every single thing that happened. Maybe it was mismanagement that they thought happened. And we have to take them with a grain of salt as well. They're allowed to have that sort of opinion. They are allowed to have that thought process. And it's okay if they do. And we have to understand why they have that. The same reason why the people who are more open-minded people of Change the Channel, and I've seen them as well, who might be feeling very strongly that they did these former producers wrong. And we have to understand that as well. We have to understand that also. But we have to keep an open mind. We have to at least listen to the other side. We have to at least hear them out. And yes, I do understand where the people, the more open-minded, the more civil people that I met from Change the Channel are coming from. And yes, I have talked to some people from Change the Channel who have been more friendly to me and more cordial and more open-minded to my point of view than other people have been. And that can happen, and we might be able to find a common ground to where, okay, maybe we can see where they're coming from, and maybe we can see why some subscribers came back. Maybe they replaced those sponsors with other sponsors. Maybe we can see why. Maybe they have gotten better. Maybe some things weren't as severe as they seem, or maybe they were as toxic all around as they were. We have to be more open-minded, and I think that does not go exclusively to this. I think it goes to other aspects of life, to other debates. And that goes into another video I made in which we have to ask for forgiveness. Yes, they can go and apologize. They can say, hey, we're sorry for the things that you say we did. Okay, we might have flubbed up in some areas, and for that we do apologize. Are we ready to forgive them? Are we ready to say, if they had done that, if they could go out tomorrow and say, hey, we effed up on these issues, and while we can't concede to some of these, we can concede to some of the other stuff. If they meet you halfway and they explain thoroughly what exactly was going on and why they did some of the things they did, would you forgive them? Would you forgive me for acting out the way I did when this thing first dropped, when the cinematic Venom response first dropped? Would you forgive me for that while also keeping an open mind to some of the things I say? And if you don't agree with them, to be cordial and civil to me about your disagreements and to have an actual conversation without it delving into vitriol and hateful messaging. If you had said yes to any of those things, then you might have taken that first step. You might have taken that first act into doing something that we need to all do at some point in time, is to not hold so much of a grudge over everything. And no, I wouldn't include the Drew Warrior case in that statement, because at the very least that's something that's going to affect them for the rest of their lives, at least the actual victimizing of those people, not necessarily what Channel Awesome did in order to address the situation. Maybe for them to understand where Channel Awesome was coming from. I do hold my reservations for certain people within Channel Awesome, in which I have had a few altercations with recently, and those people know who they are. Let's just say there are still some people I believe are pretty shady that used to work there. One of them is, of course, what happened with E-Rod, and I'm pretty sure you know what's going on there. I talked about that at State of the Channel, and I'm going to go into brief about that here, because E-Rod apparently blocked Cinematic Venom and took down his endorsement of the video after he blamed him for people sending vitriolic comments toward him for his endorsement. That is idiotic. And the reason why is because of what I had just stated. He is known to be a douchebag. He got triggered and blocked somebody for a debate over the Black Widow movie reveal. That was a little weird and a little bit petty. I don't doubt he was getting abused or harassed by certain people, and I condemn that in every sort of regard. You should know that that should be the default status of any human being. to condemn stuff like that. But at the same time, the people who were civil and constructive were probably also mad not that he endorsed Cinematic Venom's content and his video and his documentary, but what he said in the ultimatum. The whole idea that if you support some of the contributors to Channel Awesome Now, then he has nothing to say to you, and don't think you can go to the former producers or contributors and say you support them as well, because it can't work both ways. Not everybody wants to have that ultimatum put upon them. They don't want to have to pick a side. They shouldn't be forced to pick a side. And that's my big beef here. This guy more and more sounds to me like he's a complete jerk. And maybe I said the wrong thing about Cinematic Venom. Maybe he can be a good person, but he might want to defer to what I said earlier. Maybe he's more adept to understanding where I'm coming from there. But I hold my ground about E-Rod. This guy here is a jerk. You should be allowed to like some people on Channel Awesome Now and like some of the former producer content. I do like Tamara Chambers' content. I do think she comes across as a very cheery individual. At the same time, I do watch Linkar's videos a lot. I do like his content a lot. It doesn't seem like he has held that much of a grudge toward Channel Awesome, or at least to Doug or Rob. It doesn't seem as though he has that much of a grudge over it. And I do see him as trying to make his own content now. But I like both those individuals' content. I like how both of those people were putting out videos. I like what they're doing. And as individual content creators, we get put through enough without having to deal with having to choose sides, or with our fans having to choose sides like that because somebody is trying to force that upon us. That should not be, and E-Rod's being a jerk for that alone. I stand my ground at least on him. I may always disagree with Cinematic Venom on this subject, and that's quite alright. We should be able to debate quarterly about this subject, but E-Rod, that was just silly. That was just stupid, and you deserve to be called out on that as well. You deserve to be called out on it, and you deserve to be called out for the other things you have been doing. It does seem as though it is consistent in that people describe you as not a very good person to hang around, and maybe that proves my theory correct, that perhaps it was a toxic environment all around, and you did change the channel, no favors by doing that. Hopefully now we can all breathe. Maybe we can all go out for drinks at some point. Maybe we can all have a beer together or something like that. I don't like beer, but whatever. Maybe I'll be drinking the JD while you guys drink the coffee or something. Somehow that sounds a little bit dirty when I go and say that. If you liked this video, by all means hit that like button. Oh, and I may end up putting back on the like to dislike ratio. It does seem a lot of people were just joining bandwagons. That's why I took it off, and because maybe that's just something that we YouTubers need to do now in order for people to not join on bandwagons. Maybe I can make people believe I created that Call of Duty trailer or something like that. Maybe that's something. Sometimes videos that are disliked that much get just as watched. Have you ever noticed that? I mean, Rebecca Black's Friday got so many dislikes, yet you watched. She did something right, did she? By the way, she has put out a much better song in Saturday, and she self-deprecates herself there. So yeah, I do like what she has done lately with her content, so whatever. Maybe people will dislike me for that. But if you think that I need to improve on the content, then go ahead and be civil about it, but leave a comment down below. It'll be heavily moderated just in case we get some of those more vitriolic things. Like I said, again, take a breath. Relax. It is not the end of the world if someone disagrees with you. Yeah, I know this is a sensitive topic and a lot of people have very strong opinions about it, but at the same time, that just means you care enough. That just means you care enough in order to have a strong opinion, but that also means you should look at both sides. You should also, at the very least, have an open mind about it and not to berate somebody because they might not have the same opinion that you do. We need to be able to listen to each other and to forgive one another from time to time. Until then, my name is JD Shadow, and that just happened.